Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. Today we are going to be talking about something that's delicious. I think it's good tea today. I like to talk about the culture stuff. I think the culture is important. But also this was like a big, huge story like with Candace Owens some months back. Maybe it was all the way up like a year ago. I have to look back at the tweets as we go through them. But Harry Styles did a cover of Vogue magazine. He was in a dress. Candace Owens spoke out against it. She said, bring back manly men, that we are making men less masculine while making women more masculine, and talk about toxic masculinity. And it's a all big like Marxist ideology thing that people are doing while they're pushing this and trying to weaken America. And people are like, oh, you're disgusting. Like I was going through some old tweets. Olivia Wilde, who was on House for a while, and Cowboys versus Aliens and stuff. She's like, you're disgusting. And people were so angry. People were so upset. And it's so funny now that Billy Porter came out and was talking about about Harry Styles and that cover, and basically saying like, I'm the one who changed the game, yet they went with Harry Styles. And it's funny because there's a quote in the article originally with Harry Styles that proves Billy Porter's point. So I just think it's hilarious when the left decides to eat their own. It's just so funny. So we're going to be talking about that. A news story is just breaking with Meghan McCain. She just decided to leave The View earlier this year. She dived into a little bit of why. Obviously, it was a very toxic working environment, and a lot happened with throughout her life, past couple of years, with her father passing away, and she had a baby. So those played into it, but obviously she had a toxic work environment. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. I did have an interview with Tudor Dixon, who's running for governor of Michigan. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today too. And I will be posting a full interview. We talked about like about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So I'm going to be posting a little bit of that interview while we're live here today, and then I'll be posting the whole thing and just talking a little bit more about my Comic-Con experience. And I just think it's funny, convention, some of the rules that they have with COVID and other things like that. But I generally had like a good experience. So I just want to share a little bit with you guys. I think I should share a little bit more about my personal life and things I'm doing, get acquainted a little bit better. So before we jump into the delicious tea of the day, I do want to thank Brighter Michigan Pack for allowing me to be in the studio. As always, they don't care if I say something that triggers you. That's a little logo in the corner over here. They don't care if I say something that triggers you. It doesn't work like that. They're not my boss. I'm just using the space. So there's no one to cry to. There's no one to cry to. It doesn't work like that. But I'm appreciative of being able to use the space. Also, please visit blacktnews.com. Check out content that I have on the website, different articles that I've written, different merchandise that we have. Make sure that you share, that you like on social media. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. All my handles are at Black Tea News. The only one that is different is Twitter, which is at True Black Tea, and that is also my backup Twitter, TikTok account. You gotta have backups because they're very, very cruel to conservatives. Like, maybe cruel is a strong word, but they definitely have a bias against conservatives. So there's been many people who've taken the badge of honor and had to make multiple accounts. I have not had to have that happen to me yet, but they have had some like bogus restrictions on me here and there. But I've been able to fight a lot of appeals, and it's crazy, but I do really like that app. Make sure that you guys go to blacktnews.com and check out different merchandise that I have at the store. I have the goat hoodies. I do have them in different colors. I do have them beyond the hoodies, but the hoodies are so comfy, and it is fall season. I got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt. My mom saw me wearing this the other day and was like, "What? Why you got Joe Biden on your shirt?" And then I'm like, "White supremacy, defeat white supremacy." And then I explained it to her, and mom, just she kind of laughed. They got pro-Trump stuff. I got I'm not the victim you're looking for. This particular shirt that I have on right now is the Be Better Not Bitter shirt, which a lot of Black activists or just people in general need to wear, but particularly Black activists, I think, or it's a message that they need to comprehend. We got black tea stuff. We got the Better Not You Are Not That Special shirt. We got those in mugs, and they're cute little adorable mugs, so you guys should check those out. And of course, we do have seasonal things like the pumpkin spice season. Check that out. Make sure you guys get that. And we do also have those in t-shirts. So let's jump into it. So you guys know I like to start with funny things. And so since we're going to be talking about Billy Porter, I thought I should remind you of the debacle of the DNC convention. In case you didn't see this, I did post this when it happened on my Facebook page. But in case you did not see this, you're prepare yourself for what the heck was that moment.
Good night.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. Think it's time we start. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their mind. In so much resistance from behind. We gotta stop. Children, what's...
Yeah. When I saw that, I was so perplexed. And it was so funny because the DNC they went first. So I think Republicans obviously benefited from the fact that they got to see how bad the Democrat convention was, and they made something that was just like way, way, way better. But the Democrats had all this like Hollywood people, like literally all these Hollywood people involved within their production, within their storytelling and so on. And it was so bad. And so that Billy Porter thing was just getting mocked and hammered, at least by people on our side. But it looks so silly. I told you that's what you would say. What was that? That was Billy Porter. That was the DNC at the end of their convention. I think that was the first night. That is what they played. That was what Billy Porter decided to showcase and do. And so the Republicans decided to make a showcase of just ordinary people. And maybe you saw them throughout, like Madison Cawthorn, who I did get a chance to meet. He made his appearance at the RNC convention. He won his seat for Congress. He was a young man who was in the wheelchair and stood up, to contrast people who would kneel, which they did show on that video with Billy Porter. And they had the McCloskeys and other people featured that night to talk about things, real issues going on. And they just relied on Hollywood, and Hollywood just was extra. It was just too extra. It was way too extra. So I thought that's how we would start off with our funny for the day. And I want to talk about Billy Porter. And he had some comments with in regards to Vogue magazine, and how they decided to feature Harry Styles some time ago in a dress. And that caused some waves, because obviously when you put Harry Styles or someone that popular who's in One Direction or whatever in a dress in Vogue, you want a response. You're doing it maybe to change the culture, not maybe, to change the culture and to get a reaction, because you know it's going to have some shock value, and you want people to talk about it. And then there's people on the left who will act like, oh my gosh, and just feign like outrage that other people are talking about the fact that they are talking about the thing that they obviously wanted people to talk about. Like, you're gaslighting people. I know that you wanted me to talk about it, and you knew that I would do it, and you know that I know that you knew it. they're just really silly. So anyway, Billy Porter had some issues with them actually having Harry Styles do it, because he's someone who said that he basically invented um, this move and carried it. As a matter of fact, he's from a show called Pose, I believe. The first time I saw Billy Porter actually sing or perform or do something was at the DNC thing in that video. So not the best impression I have of him, I guess. Not that he can't sing or isn't a good performer, but that was just like cringe and bad and extra. Um, was terrible. And he's also in that Cinderella Amazon movie, and he's the fairy godmother, the fabulous godmother, or something. And so people talked about that ruthlessly on like TikTok. I have not seen it. I would not watch that. But it seems like it's not going well. It just seems like it's a big train wreck. But anyway, he's a star in that film. But I know Billy Porter because he's a man and would wear a dress and outrageous things, and people would talk about it. That's how I became accustomed with Billy Porter. So he is sort of right about, like, he was the one who kind of invented, that game, and you really can't say he's wrong in that regard. But it he pointed out that Harry Styles was the one that Vogue decided to land a cover with. It was last December when it all happened. So Harry Styles had these big extravagant skirts and so on. And so Billy criticized Vogue's decision to make Harry its first man cover star in a more recent interview in the Sunday Times, where the triple threat artist and upcoming author noted that his own story style broke boundaries before Harry's did. I'm reading off of a BuzzFeed article. I changed the whole game, Billy said. I personally changed the whole game . And this is not ego. That is just fact. I was the first one doing it, and now everyone is doing it. And I'm not keeping track enough to know if that is the case, that he's the only, or not the only, but the first. But it seemed like he was pushing it and more involved or whatever than like Harry Styles. So I'm gonna err on the side of maybe giving it to Billy on this one, because that's there's certainly now how I know Billy Porter, just that outrageous sort of feminine outfits and really pushing the boundaries of gender and outfits and so on. He said, I feel like the fashion industry has accepted me because they have to. I'm not necessarily convinced, and here is why, he continued. I created the conversation about non-binary fashion, and yet Vogue still put Harry Styles, a straight white man, in a dress on their cover for the first time. He is the one you're going to try to use to represent this new conversation. And Harry hasn't labeled his sexuality outright regarding his fashion choices. The singer told Vogue last year that gender clothing norms are limiting, and there's so much joy to be had in playing with clothes. So Billy has a point, though, right? Billy has a big point, because he's the ones out there being himself, trying to represent himself. And there's another quote that I must have been passing over, but he said for him, this is like political. Like, it's a part of who he is. He's trying to make statements. He's trying to change the world, because he's trying to find well, he has his place in it. He's fighting for acceptance of who he is. And Harry Styles, he's playing with clothes. So this man, this icon who started this conversation, who, because he wore these things and grabbed attention of people like me who were talking about it, and there's other people sticking up for him, and there's people saying, what is going on? And that's how I'm familiar with Billy Porter, just to be honest. And he's the one who's making those statements. So why shouldn't they have turned to Billy Porter and said, yeah, you should be on Vogue wearing this dress? And instead they go with a straight white male who likes to wear pearl necklaces sometimes. And Harry Styles says he's playing with clothes, and Billy Porter's like, this is who I am, this is my life, I'm changing the game because I need to, and the world needed to change. So I think he has a point, and I don't know what the greater response will be. I don't know if Harry will say anything, but what's really, really interesting about this story is I remember when Harry Styles wore that dress, and you guys probably remember that Candace Owens said something about that, and people were very mad at Candace, and she said there's no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this, the West. The steady feminization in the West, the steady feminization of our men at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children is not a coincidence. It is an outright attack. So that's what she tweeted out, and people were mad at her. You had Olivia Wilde said, "Oh, you're so pathetic or disgusting" or something, and other people were saying things. If you Google, try to find what Candace Owens said, and like on not Google, but if you go to YouTube and try to find her Instagram stuff, I guess you could just go to her Instagram, but you find all these like insider ETV, like this made mainstream news, her criticizing Harry, and Harry is their darling, right? From this big, huge band. And it's obvious that they do things like this for attention. And it is obviously not feminine for a man to wear a dress. Now, if you're trying to break the borders and the boundaries of that, which I guess what they're trying to say, that's one thing. But the rest of the Daily Wire guys jumped in, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and so on, are just like, why are you guys pretending like what Candace is saying isn't like making total sense? Like maybe people don't want to make the whole Marxism connection and stuff like that, but just to pretend like men wearing dresses isn't not manly, like and people say genders, they want to say gender is a construct, and there's certain rules that we've placed around gender, and when we point that out, what, that's sexist? But the whole gender ideology and all, it's framed around our social constructs of it. So there's certain, if it's a social construct, we've already constructed certain social rules, correct? So it's obviously a thing that men don't normally wear dresses. At least not big fluffy sort of things. If you want to go back to like toga days or something along those lines, I mean, because people going out and wearing, pants, that's not something that's so, I mean, that's more of like a modern thing anyway. But the style of the clothing, the frills and all that stuff, of course that's more feminine, and they're trying to push those boundaries. But they were so mad at Candace. They were so mad at Candace. And Harry sort of, they're like, oh, Harry clapped back at her. It wasn't really much of a clap back, but I'm going to play a clip that's one of the entertainment people had some time ago.
Bring back manly men. That was the caption of Harry Styles' latest Instagram post, which undoubtedly is a clapback at conservative author Candace Owens, who criticized him for wearing a dress on the cover of Vogue last month.
Virtually everything that comes out of Hollywood is about destroying values and weakening our society. So whether that's baby mama culture, women taking their clothes off, feminism, right? I don't need a man, all of the stuff that you're seeing, and now men in dresses in Vogue. If you don't realize by now that Hollywood is satanic and you should not be idolizing those people, I can't help you.
The Watermelon Sugar singer also addressed the drama in Variety's Hitmakers issue, saying that traditional gender boundaries are becoming more and more blurred. To not wear something because it's female's clothing, you shut off a whole world of great clothes. And I think what's exciting about right now is you can wear what you like. It doesn't have to be X or Y.
So that wasn't much of a clapback, right? It was just like it was just a response, and maybe he couldn't think of a better response than that. Maybe that's all he felt that he needed. Everyone's like, yeah, he clapped back. No, he just put things in. I don't even know if he put in quotations. And he's like eating a banana in another outfit, like, oh, Harry clapped back. Like, no, you just put on another frilly thing and made a comment. And she, in her kind of this way, at she made her remarks. There's nothing that she said in that video that I played right that I disagreed with. There's a lot of things that Hollywood obviously pushes out to sort of not even sort of, to destroy the sort of cultural norms that we have, the societal norms. She mentioned baby mama drama sort of things, and which is true too. Um, she mentioned now men in dresses, and people talk about masculinity and how it's so toxic and so on. You have the same time they want women to be more masculine and sort of take on that role as both, and they try to interchange the roles of male and female like they're actually interchangeable. What But there was a time when we would say women are unique individuals, and now it butts up with this thing where they do where you can basically interchange things by how you ever identify, because gender is just a construct. So it's all going at a head with each other. Are women unique? Or are women something that it's interchangeable based off of how you feel? If you ask someone what how to define a woman, like on the left, man, they don't really have a good answer. They really don't. And I did a whole video about this because Ben Shapiro did a video on gender ideology, and there was a trans woman who tried to debunk it, and so I did a debunk. Ben's video was debunked, and so they debunked Ben's debunked. So I debunked their debunk of Ben's debunk. And so you can go ahead and check that out. I have um on my YouTube channel. But it's just really an interesting time. And I remember the firestorm all this was. And now it's so funny that Billy Porter has clapped back. And so I don't know if many people are talking about it so much. And I hope that Candace kind of, or someone just revisits the story and says, oh, this is so hilarious because Billy Porter is basically saying that Harry Styles is playing dress, and that's what Harry Styles basically said. Like, oh, there's so many. If we just go by gender lines, there's so many things that I won't be able to play with, and I'm playing with clothes. And Billy Porter's like, no, this is my life. This who I am. I am a non-binary person. It's like cultural appropriation, right? It's sort of like cultural appropriation. Like my gender isn't your you know your playtime, sir. So I just thought it was hilarious, and I hope there's a little bit more, I don't know, epic blowback and talk about it from other, well, if other conservative commentators talk about it. I suppose it'll trend more, but I definitely saw that this morning and thought it was pretty darn interesting. So what do you guys think? I think it's funny, and I think Billy Porter has a point. I don't know if he feels a little. It seems in his article that he seems a little jaded by the industry, and I totally get the Vogue issue with having Harry Styles, but he said he feels like people just sort of deal with him because they have to. So that is definitely pretty interesting, and I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about diving into why he feels like that. But very, very interesting, extraordinarily interesting with Mr. Billy Porter and Henry Styles. Man, I hope Candace Owens talks about this. um, let's let's move on. So Meghan McCain was on The View for a few years, and she always sort of felt a little bit conflicted. Well, first of all, it's just contentious anyway, and she's outnumbered. And The View, they want someone conservative, but they don't. She said that they don't really want someone too conservative or real conservative because it's hard to get along, and not because conservatives are the ones causing the drama, but everybody else on the show leans left. And she said eventually they did get like a more conservative kind of producer to help her. But even when they would list topics or try to pick topics, like all the hosts would try to pick topics, and she would often get outnumbered because, they didn't want to go by what people want to talk about, like on the panel, but she's outnumbered. So why wouldn't she get left out if that's the way they want to divvy up the topics? So and she did have a say in like some people coming on, like Madison Cawthorn and Lindsey Graham and other people like that. But it was hard for Meghan, and at the time she's dealing with like Joe Bear and Behar and Whoopi Goldberg, and the other people are on the left too, but she has a better relationship with those other women than with Whoopi. And she said at first her relationship with Whoopi was warmer. But one day Whoopi kind of snapped at her and told her to be quiet, and that sort of changed things. So, in which they kind of apologized a bit, but that it really, I guess, hurt her feelings at the time. Things just really weren't the same. So, she had a rough time on the show, and so after she decided that she was going to leave after on January the 5th, and that was when she came back from maternity leave. And so she came back and she just decided to kind of joke like, "Hey Joy, I bet you missed me." And Joy said, "No one missed you. Zero." And Megan had like severe postpartum anxiety after she had her baby, and after Joy said that, she just like had to like take a break, and she was like sobbing and upset, and I think she said she vomited. And then she just kind of dealt with like, no one, I was gone and no one missed me, which I don't know if that was just like, I don't know, the hormone imbalance of just after having the baby, because I'm just kind of like, why would they miss you? It doesn't seem like they have a very friendly environment. But coming to work in a hostile environment and dealing with people who don't like you, and you have to fight for your voice to be heard every day. And she dealt with her father dying while being on the show. And if there was anything Republican at all that they didn't like, she was the one attacked, and the one who was meant to stand up for Republican values and so on. But at the same time, this is like Trump mania. The whole world's talking about Trump, especially like the people in the View. Anything happens, they have to bring up Trump and so on. And this was like still at the height of his presidency and the campaign, re-election and so on. And so, but she is someone who doesn't even like Trump. And she like has legitimately good reason, right? Because he had this whole feud with her dad. So at times Megan talked about how she didn't even know she was I watched a bit of her when she was on the Ben Shapiro Sunday special, and some other interviews with McCain, and she said at times she even questions if she's the right person to be on the show, because she can't quite represent those people, because she's obviously not Trumpian. She's come now. I've been following her page recently a bit because after Afghanistan, I wanted to know what her opinion was on Joe Biden, and she was horrified. But at the same time, she's not going to admit that her mom made a mistake, like campaigning for Joe. Which I understand that she has a pretty emotional tie, but obviously Joe Biden was a mistake the whole time. But she had a more personal relationship with Biden, that she said the Joe Biden that she was aware of personally isn't the same person that she saw when he was addressing like the 13 troops being killed and so on. She said she doesn't recognize this man. Which I'm just from an outside perspective, is he's always been the same man, but he comforted her in a time of her great loss. So they had a different relationship. So people are very hard on Meghan McCain. She's not my most favorite conservative out there, but I have appreciated her time on The View and the way that she's pushed back on a very hostile environment. And talked at one point in their interview that she had to eventually kind of make the decision like, hey, I want to be honest rather than needing to be liked. And so she stuck up on hard issues sometimes, and not hard from our perspective, but just hard with the fact that these people were going to come hard at her and she'd be trending. And if she was ever trending, it was usually Megan pushed back on something on The View. So she after Joy made those comments to her, that's when she decided that she wasn't coming back for sure. That's when her mind was totally made up, and she made to make a better decision for herself and her family. And she's a new mom, and I wish her the best. Obviously, I wish that they had made better election choices, but with there's some people who are never Trumpers who are just I don't understand, like Jeff Flake, for example, Martha McCallum like grilled him one day, and she's like, "Why wouldn't you support Trump? Like you're for school choice." He's like, "Of course," and she listed like other things, and they're like, "Joe Biden is against the things that you're talking about." Like it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of people out there who I don't know who thought they could support Joe Biden, and we go back to cultural norms, but obviously we haven't gone back to any sort of norms. And Biden is the one who like started like torching norms. If you go back to like Borking in the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas, for example, Joe Biden has never been on the cultural norms team. He's always been on let me decide what's best for Joe Biden team. He's never been a he's had moments for sure. But and maybe because of those moments, people felt like there was a more consistent pattern where maybe he could get people back to sort of politics as usual, um, or politics as any normal, let's just you debate, I debate, we'll compromise in some kind of way. But I don't know why they really thought that'd be Joe Biden's thing. But you can see the sort of people he was hiring on the campaign trail to get him to where he is, and you should have been able to make better decisions. That's my opinion. But in the case of someone like Meghan McCain, her resistance to Trump is extraordinarily personal, and she's even with the Afghanistan debacle, and people saying, "Oh, I could sure use some mean tweets." She's made comments like, "It's on Trump that he didn't make a better appeal to people because he wasn't nice enough." Um, I still can't rock with that opinion either, because elections are about choices, and Trump was still obviously the better choice. But I can understand her perspective and where she stands, especially since it's so personal to her. But she did a lot of good work on The View. Shared many of her rants and arguments with Joy and Whoopi and so on. And she says that she gave ABC a list of potential replacement. She said none of them have tested yet, and she hopes that conservative women will have a bigger voice on TV. And so we'll see what happens with that show. Someone asked me once if I'd want to go on that show, and I don't know about that. Not that I couldn't take all them every day, and oh my gosh, they would they would dislike me far more than they dislike Megan, for sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. And people were calling her Ice Queen. And this was like, I think around when her father was dying, there was a lot of leaks of the tabloids and people talking trash about Megan. And she tried to find out who was leaking. And they didn't know how to control it and so on with at ABC. So it was just really interesting environment. I'd love to see I know Ben Shapiro wants to at least go on The View. I'd love to see that episode. Obviously he's not going to take off time from the Daily Wire to join The View. But I know that's like his he wants to at least go on. Um uh they would not take on Candace Owens. But that would be fun. But she would like she would take over segments all the time. All the time. That'd be great to watch. I guess it's something I think that I could do. I don't know if it's something I would want to do. But Godspeed to Megan. I think she did a good job for the time that she was there. Was she the right person for it? Um, I don't know. I don't know. And she said that was something she was always concerned about because she didn't really represent the party at the time, and they always still thrusted her as the like person who had to defend every sort of Republican thing, even though people sort of running the party wasn't always in her corner at that time. But she did the best that I think that she could. If you look at all the circumstances that were surrounding her at the time, I can't say I was too fond of her father, but man, that what a terrible thing to happen, especially in such a toxic environment and on TV and being in such a public eye. So I wish her the best. I wish her the best, and I am looking forward to seeing what interesting choices they may pick. Now, they may just go really lax and have someone who just chimes in every now and then and doesn't really get too spicy. But I appreciate that Megan got spicy from time to time. So next thing, I did go. Well, the end of last weekend was really, really, really interesting and really busy for me. So on Thursday, I recorded my show early, and I intended to record Thursday's show early and Friday's show on the same day. Um, and so I could stream something on Friday and not have to worry about. Because you guys know, I went to Comic Con on Friday, Motor City Comic Con. It's their 30th anniversary, and after I recorded the first show for the Thursday that I just premiered live, I got someone told me like, hey, they're doing an audit in Macomb County. And so I had the opportunity to go do an interview, sit down with Tony Ferlini, who I've had on the show, and did an interview with about just election integrity, what was going on in Macomb County, and so on, all the things that he could do to improve election integrity. So I got to talk to some election experts. One of them, Ben Cotton, who a lot of people are on the right are aware of. He was in a part of the Maricopa County audit and so on. And so got to talk to the people that Macomb County actually hired, and then someone else who was overseeing it. And so I asked them all. I know I said ask, kind of weird. I asked them all what, like, I've gone to like Stop the Steal rallies. I've gone to these meetings, these dinners with people talking about election integrity, and I've gone to several district meetings and so on and other things like that. And people really, really, truly feel that their votes don't matter. That if we don't fix 2020, that there's nothing left. And I said, do you have anything to say about that? Do you feel that that's a misguided opinion? And all of them, including Ben Cotton, all said that is not a good opinion. That is a ridiculous opinion. And they believe that the process overall seemed to still be good. And they believe that we are too far into the digital age. We have too many ballots to count at this point in such a short amount of time that we're not going to be going backwards as far as technology goes. They think it's going to be advancing forward. Which is funny because I was the youngest person in the room, and I seem the most apprehensive about technology going more forward. And I'm not saying I want everyone to count by hand, but they're talking about like it may not be too long that you can just vote over the internet or just vote with your phone. And I'm like, what kind of parameters can we put in place? Will it become less localized? And they didn't seem to be concerned about that. But I said there's people right now in Washington trying to, well, some of them, I guess, at least didn't seem too concerned about that. But I was concerned, and I said there's people right now in DC, but at least with the Democrats, I don't believe they obviously don't have the votes for this, at least right now, but they were pushing to really sort of change our election laws and rules and federalize a lot of stuff to a point where a lot of it wasn't even like constitutional, I believe. But that's how we keep our elections really secure, is having them as localized as possible. And I don't know how technology would quite change that. And they think it'll be easier. It'll be better from a transparency perspective and from their expertise. But they also said we're paid to be paranoid. And so they really did praise the Macomb County Clerk, Anthony Ferlini. And they said that he was ahead of the trend. So with their election machines, they do have the capability to take a digital image when you scan the ballots and stuff. And so at the last like local election they had, he turned on that feature. He said it didn't slow him down or anything like that. And so they're saying the steps that he's taking is going to basically probably be the trend that everyone is going to start doing. So at least in Macomb County, I think if you live in the Macomb area, you should feel pretty good, I think, at this point. But what was crazy about it to me is like I'm driving there. I'm almost like at the building, and I see like a handful of protesters protesting. I'm like, what is they're doing an audit? But I suppose that there's people who wanted them to do more, and that's why they're doing the audit. But there's only so our elections are localized. There's only so much that someone can do. So they were protesting there, and then I also got invited to his fundraiser that night. and I saw protesters there too. And it was just a lot. It was just a lot. So I did write an article on that. I posted it on Friday. Just in case you missed it, please go to blacktnews.com and check out that article. And I will be posting the whole interview. Was probably about the whole time we talked was maybe close to about a half hour. And so I will post that as well. But there is a clip from Ben Cotton talking about how they believe that Macomb County is ahead of the trend. So if you do live in the Macomb area, at least feel a little bit better about your elections. Not everything is localized, and you still need to fight for good election integrity. I talked a little bit on the show. Was it maybe early last week? Maybe was it last Monday, maybe the Monday before, about in Southfield they have a election clerk right now running for re-election who actually did get charged on several counts of fraud. And so there are bad actors out there, and I don't know how many people are out there have the capability of doing something high tech, but we know there's people who are capable of doing things very low tech. And there were issues at the TFC Center that was low tech, and I don't even know how malicious some of it was, but some of it was like, they obviously are rooting for someone, and when you don't follow procedure, that bias can take over. For example, Christina Carano, who's running for Secretary of State, my good friend, I've had her on the show several times. She was at the TFC Center that night, and I was the first person. She told me I was the first person she called. That's what I believe. But anyway, she called me, and she told me that she witnessed instances where there'd be like a ballot and it'd be marked for like maybe Trump and Biden both. So in a case like that, it's spoiled, right? It's supposed to not count. But there'd be people there. It'd be like the election workers, because she was just like an observer. They'd be like, she'd be like, "Oh, you got to toss that out," and they'd be like, "Well, what do you think?" And they turn to like their buddy, and they're supposed to be Republicans and Democrats, like both, like they're supposed to be even, but they have a hard time hiring. They say they have a hard time hiring Republicans in Detroit, but I know there are plenty of people who did apply, but they were paying so well that if you had a cousin or a friend, you said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" and they hired you in the Republican spot, and maybe you're a Democrat. That's basically what I believe pretty much happened, because there weren't many Republicans actually working it. So anyway, they would be like, "Oh, I think we should give it to Biden." She's like, "Why do you think you should give it to Biden?" And they didn't have a good answer. And then she'd be like, "Well, let's go get a supervisor." And they get the supervisor, and the supervisor would turn to the workers and like, "What do you guys think?" It was like, "Well, we think you should give it to Biden." Why would you give it? It's like, why would you give it to Biden and not give it to Trump? Because obviously when you break protocol, that's when people decide to sort of go along with their bias. So do I believe that all those people came in with the malicious intention of trying to make up every sort of Biden vote that they could? Not necessarily. Do I think it was part of some big conspiracy theory at that time? Maybe, perhaps not. But in the heat of that moment, if people do not follow procedure to a T, and they're like start leaning one way or another, and they don't want to be fair, they want their guy to win, that's when you start getting into some issues and some trouble. So we definitely do need people who are watchful. We do need people who to look out for bad actors. That's why I was glad that Brighter Michigan PAC decided to take charge and do a droplet for this clerk in Southfield who's running. If you live in the Oakland County, if you live in the 14th district, or if you just live somewhere in the area, you could do something to help to let people know that there's a clerk who's running for re-election in Southfield who did some really shady stuff, several counts of fraud. You should let people know, because she was convicted in 2018, I believe. And so she couldn't even, well, not convicted, but that's when the charges or whatever brought up. So she couldn't even oversee the 2020 election. And that was a crazy election. So to think that a clerk couldn't even oversee like the craziest election we've had in decades, maybe in a lifetime, because she had her own stuff to deal with. And she's running for re-election. This woman has won awards for Democrat of the Year from like Debbie Dingle and other people. So we gotta watch out for bad actors. But when you do have people trying their hardest to do a good job, at least from what I've observed, at least from who I've talked to, at least from talking to some election experts and so on, they seem to be thinking that in Macomb County right now they're doing a good job, and some other counties need to jump on the bandwagon. But guys, to the people out there like protesting, like Anthony Ferlini and other stuff, go pick up some droplet and then go drop it off in Southfield so people can know about people like the Southfield clerk. Let's have a positive trajectory to what we're doing here. Let's not like be stuck on people who are actually like doing a good job. Just my 2 cents about that. So that was my Thursday. In that morning, I also interviewed Tudor Dixon, who is running for governor. She's the only female candidate in the race. On Mackinac, I believe she was second place in the grassroots poll, first place being Chief Craig, or former Chief Craig, Police Chief Craig, James Craig of Detroit. But she's really interesting. She's a very interesting lady. She's very down to earth, and I can see why she's polling at number 2 right now. So I do plan to get other people in here who are ready for governor, but I happened to talk to Tudor Dixon, and she was very, very, very nice. And so I'm going to be posting her whole interview later, but I will be sharing a little bit of the interview that we had the other day, because I do think it is important to talk to your legislators. And FYI, I did tell you guys I would be talking to all of the try to talk to everybody who is running for different positions and see where they stand on the ballot initiative, where they're trying to take the Michigan vote how we decide our president, which right now it's decided our electors cast their ballots towards whoever wins the popular vote in the state of Michigan. There is a ballot initiative that people are putting together to try to make it so that goes to the popular vote of the national popular vote. So it will surrender the voices of Michiganders to the larger populations like New York and California and so on. So there is a former Democrat Party chair and a former Michigan Party chair doing it. We talked about it at length on this show, and I wanted to know what sort of people would support this. And I want to make sure that people running for our offices, especially if they're Republican, do not support this. So I will let you, this wasn't something we tackled in the interview, but this was something that I had an interview with Tudor Dixon about, and she thinks it's a terrible idea. So FYI, first one, just so you know that I talked to, Tudor Dixon thinks it's a terrible idea. So if that was, I told you, you should not support anyone, and I don't care who they are. If they support that ballot initiative, just FYI, Tudor Dixon is not for that. So I just thought you guys should at least know that. So here's a little bit of the interview with Tudor Dixon. Well, I'm assuming, because you're very passionate about this, and I appreciate that. And is the family aspect and the education and what we've done to our kids the past couple of years, is that really the driving force of why you decided to step up and take charge?
It is probably the number one issue for me, because I'm a mom of 4. I had the same situation. So we went through, before COVID, my daughter had moved from elementary school to middle school, where she went from a school that had 25 kids in a classroom to all of a sudden she left her elementary school, went to a school with 1,000 students, and she panicked. She started to do poorly in school. I didn't think that this would be a situation where I would go, I need to change my child's school. But she came to me and she said, look, I'm not comfortable making friends. I feel anxious. I don't want to get up in the morning. And this is a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
We moved her, and she now goes to a private school. But for us, it's a financial burden. So we've had to go to family and say, can you help us with this? I look at my own situation. She thrives in this private school. So yes, it's a huge passion of mine, because I say, wow, think of how much more opportunity our students could have if parents could make that decision like I did. But also, COVID hit. My other girls, I had 2 7-year-olds at the time who are trying to navigate Google Classroom.
Twins, right?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. Google Classroom was really challenging for them, but it was challenging for us too, because we think they have their assignments done. All of a sudden, we're missing things. It wasn't the right thing for us. wasn't the right thing for a lot of families. But Michigan has been, we need to offer better alternatives regardless of COVID because of the situation I just said. 11.9% reading proficiency rate in Detroit. That's a failing grade. It's not acceptable. We are not setting our state up for a future.
Yeah.
And obviously the children are my passion, but the state in general is my passion. So I see this as the first step to a successful state, because if we can give our children a world-class education, then we will have companies coming here and bringing more jobs. And that means that even if you feel your child is getting the best education possible in your school, you want to have that child, I assume, and most parents tell me across the state, you want your child to have an opportunity to stay here after graduation,
Yeah.
whether it's college or high school, and have a career. Well, to bring businesses here, I have to show them that we have a world-class education program for our students.
Yeah, so she is correct. We do need to make sure that we do something about our education system. And as I said, it was bad before COVID, and I had some horror stories that I talked to a couple of legislators about. Last year, a very close friend of ours, a church member, passed away, and she left, a husband behind and two girls, and just to think about them not being able to be in school and be with friends and so on after going through such a tremendous loss just really really broke my heart. And so um there there's so many other devastating effects to COVID. And there's another conversation we talked about, I think maybe there's more kind of off screen, but just about how President Trump talked about how we don't want the disease to be worse, the cure to be worse than disease. And I definitely feel like we got there very fast with COVID. And I think that anyone running for governor, and there's people in my comments who obviously have opinions about other people they support in the primaries, but whoever decides to run in whatever state that you're in, I think it's important to talk to people about how they were devastated during this pandemic, especially businesses. And they need to know that there's never going to be a situation like this again where someone's going to be able to pick winners and losers and decide that some kid working at McDonald's is more essential than the flower shop that you put together that needed Mother's Day to survive and wasn't able to because they were deemed not essential. Well, why aren't they essential? Because what, people don't need flowers? Well, it's essential for people to sell those things so they can take care of their families. And that's the same reason like Micro Center and Best Buy were open, right? Because people needed to work from home, and because it was essential that they worked, it was essential that they got those supplies. So if these supplies were essential because it's essential for people to work, then because it's essential for people to be able to provide for their families, and how come these other stores that weren't open weren't essential to the people who obviously need the job to take care of their families? So it's amazing what government intervention can do and how it can utterly just destroy people. And to me, it really shouldn't be hard to beat Whitmer, in my opinion. And a lot of these other, Democrat governors who just went psycho during the pandemic and just were so tyrannical. But you have to tell the story, you have to paint the story, and you have to make a good pitch. And I think she's Tudor Dixon is at least able to tell a good one, and paint the story. She told me about how she was talking to somebody who owns a hotel, and they said when their kids come home, they got to start, fixing up the beds and all this other stuff because people won't work. People don't have employees. And people need to know how hard it's been. We all know that the pandemic has been hard, but how much of that is because of government, the incompetency of the government? A lot. A lot. The government is the pandemic. COVID is just a disease. The pandemic is the government. And I think we really learned that. And we learned that a hard way. The hard way. Last thing I want to mention. I mentioned a little bit yesterday, but obviously I said I was at Comic-Con over the weekend, and I had a really good time. I did pretty well. And for those of you who don't know, I sell books. I write books. It was my goal to write 30 books by my 30th birthday. And I think I had that goal because I think it was in the Pontiac Library one time for an event. And there was a woman there who was an author and she had 30 books. And I just was like, it'd be cool to write 30 books by my 30th birthday. And I was able to do it. And for those of you who don't know, I'm 32. Because some people are like, oh my gosh, I told someone that the other day, they thought I was 21. I was like, that's kind, very kind. But I'm 32 now. So I've been writing novels since I graduated high school. I went to CCS for animation, and due to financial issues and just stuff with the family, I wasn't able to go for more than a semester. And so and I was going there to write like an action adventure cartoon. I had this idea, I had all these episodes written up, and I thought I was going to make like the next Avatar Last Airbender, without the woke stuff that happened at the end with Korra stuff. And it was going to be a big epic adventure sort of story. And I had written like anime manga sort of like chapters and other stuff for other projects and so on. But this was like my baby that I thought was going to birth into existence. And so I remember Twilight, of all things, was coming out, and they're talking about Stephanie Meyer. And Stephanie Meyer just had like a meteoric rise that was so unusual in the publishing world from the time that she wrote it and got published and so on. She got picked up so fast, she was still getting rejection letters after she had got accepted for Twilight. And some of those letters were really harsh, but somebody liked it. But I saw a report talking about how much money she was making or was gonna make, and how she was like the next J.K. Rowling, or people were hailing her that sort of way. So I was like, you know what? Let me pick up Twilight and see what this is. So my sisters were really into it. So I started reading it, and I was like, you know what? I can totally do this. So within 6 months, I did a project. I painted a mural for a church over a baptismal of Jesus, and it was 8 feet by 11 feet. I had to build like a floor so I could even paint it and rent a scaffold. It was so big. And the money I got with that, I went and I bought my first laptop and I started writing. And within 6 months, I finished my first novel. Now, my first novel that I wrote, I do not have that published because it was my baby. And I was like, I can't do that yet. And so I wanted it to be picked up a traditional way. So I just kept writing, and I kept pitching and stuff. And then one day my dad and my oldest sister was like, why don't you just do it yourself? And I was like in the kitchen with them, and I was just overcome with such fear of like, but what if it fails or something? And then it was really dramatic, but it was really quick, like in like a few tears, like, but then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so the first book that I published was my Super Kid book, which was based off some crazy stories about my dad. That's like the inspiration behind him. And so he's a kid who believes he has superpowers. He doesn't really have superpowers. His parents says he has an overactive imagination. And he teams up with a friend named Kiara who goes along with it because she super likes him. And so she becomes Princess Lady Diva, and then they help on this other kid Lee in the neighborhood, so he thinks it's all real. So he became Stickman, and they just go around the community trying to do good. And then I just came out with a sequel not too long ago, Super Kid 2. So that was the first one that I published, and I wrote other ones. And so out of my 30 books, I have 14 that are actually published. Some of those books are children's books, and my youngest sister Tina, who's a very talented artist. I've showed her stuff on here before, and she was right next to me at Comic-Con. She had a better time than I did, like sales-wise, but she has so many fabulous things. But we both did well, but she was like knocked out of the park. But she's working on my illustrations for my book, and one of my books right now. So something I've been working on for a long time, because I think Super Kid I published in 2011. And actually, when I met Dean Cain, I did give him my Super Kid book, and Tina gave him one of her portraits that she did of him. And that might have been 2011, 2012, maybe it was a little longer than that, but that was the the first time I like had a booth when he was there. That was the first time I had a booth at Motor City Comic Con, and that might have been my first like official like comic book booth or whatever. And then I start going other places. I start going to festivals, start going to other events, and so on. And so that's just something else that I do outside of Black Tea. Been doing for a long time, and it's been a very fun ride. And so one of the most memorable times of the weekend, I saw a family walk by, and they pointed like, "Oh, I remember Super Kid." And so the mom was there with her daughter, and they said that Super Kid was like their bedtime story, and that was something that they would read together. And I was just filled with so much joy. And then they got Super Kid 2. That was my first sale of Saturday. I wish I had taken a picture with them, because after they left, they were like down. I was like, oh my gosh, I should have got a picture. And that's when I was like, I need to take pictures with people who buy my books. Like, I need these memories. I can't just have like all my camera roll being political events and my nieces and nephews. So I'm like, I got to take more stuff of me. And but that was really so touching. And I think it's important to support creators who are doing something different. And I didn't really start on this thing to pitch myself so much. I just kind of wanted to share, because we're all becoming such good friends, I guess. But if you see, which is kind of with these big titles with Superman and Batman and Captain America, the Avengers and so on, how you have these super leftist people who hate the country, who don't find optimism in these stories or these characters in general, and they're just using their emblems while pushing these terrible messages. It's getting to the point where we need to let maybe some of these iconic things that we love die and let them go. But we still need other kind of content. So I guess there's Super Kid. So my thing was becoming sort of someone's ritual, someone's culture. Because I remember I have such fond memories of like comic books and sci-fi and so on, and being with my family and enjoying those things as a family. So it's really touching to me that I'm contributing to that. So I would ask that you guys help me on that journey too. I want you to support Black Tea, but I do want you to support, Ninja Dust Publishing. That's my website for my books. I'll put that up on the screen if anyone is interested. You can go ahead and get some of those, my precious babies, some of my books. But I think it is important, whether it's me or somebody else, that you support. The one comic book artist who I often show his comics when I start the show, his name is George Alexopoulos, but his Twitter name is G Prime 85, I think. But when people complain about Superman and Batman and so on, he always says you can keep complaining. And I think he really said this during the He-Man debacle. He said you can complain if you want, but you really need to, if you're going to complain, you need to have someone else who you would rather support. So don't just complain, uplift someone else as well. So we need to try to do that. Young Ripper 95 is someone else who I follow like on YouTube and so on. He has a really good podcast. He's a libertarian, Black guy who's libertarian, and he's very fond of comic books and so on. But he sees that the industry is trash now. And he had a big inside scoop prior to the Superman Jonathan Kent coming out as gay, because someone told him about it, and they said that there was their last straw, and so I guess they're going to leave DC Comics and they're working with him on a project now. And so his attitude is, I want to compete with these guys, and people need to do that. Daily Wire understands that they need to make up different content, and that's why they started producing different movies. I think they just started filming their content with Gina Carano. They announced that. When she got kicked off by Disney for just saying her conservative views, they were there to pick her up after that. And now she's so massively popular because she stood her ground. And I'm grateful that Daily Wire was there to do that. Tim Pool is also starting to make content himself. So people understand that there needs to be content. Honest to God, that's what I wanted President Trump to do after the election. And he is they are from rumblings and stuff that I hear, he is still very focused on trying to help with elections in different races and so on. So his hands are still like in the political pie, whether he decides that he's going to full on run for president again or not, he's still active. But he understands branding so well, that in my opinion, that I thought that that's really where he should try to help other people sort of rise, because I've said this so many times on this broadcast, and I'll still keep saying it. You can put whatever measure you want for election integrity on the books, but if you do not do something to break through the barrier, whether it's the news barrier or social media barrier or the Hollywood barrier, we're not going to be able to win elections, especially if stuff like this national popular vote passes, because Democrats are very confident that they can control the minds of the masses. So, I would like to see President Trump, whether he's doing his own streaming thing, or there was talk of like starting a social network platform. He brands a little too much with his name for me to think that a Trump platform would just like become the next Facebook. But even if they had to do like a new service, or just uplift other voices, maybe similar to mine, I think that would be a space where he could be so effective, um and where he has experience in, because gosh, I love The Apprentice. I was such a huge fan of Apprentice. Me and my family, when the Money 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 song came on, we just be dancing in the living room, so excited. It was my dream to go on like Celebrity Apprentice, to get up, in the height of that one day, and to be invited on, and to win it. And I think I could have charmed Mr. Trump in the boardroom. I think I could have done it, seriously. And that's why I went to my first Lincoln dinner, because he was a speaker. Someone asked, have I ever thought about doing a webcomic? I guess not really. Not a webcomic so much. I'm not opposed to it though. I know webcomics are like really popular right now. And in manga, like traditional stuff just isn't there. I can draw, and as a matter of fact, I did draw my Super Kid covers and stuff. And I did also make all my book covers, because guys know I'm a graphic artist and stuff. But it takes me, I'm not like expert fast or anything like that. I'm not expert fast. So that would be something I would need to personally source out, to do all that kind of stuff. I just wouldn't personally have the time for it. And thank God I do have my baby sister who's like helping me with the illustrations for for one of my books, which our goal is to have it done by Christmas so people could order it for Christmas. So that is our fast track goal, because my sister said I need timelines, deadlines, because I don't know, the panic motivates her. So we set a deadline. So we'll see if we're able to pump that that children's book out by Christmas. But it's a really fun book, and I wrote it inspired off my nephew. So I'll be excited to share that with you guys. But for the stuff that I do have, consider supporting like Super Kid. It is a very conservative book. It actually, when I wrote this, it was my dream to hear like Rush Limbaugh, like people just hate this book because it has such good family conservative values, and hear the leftists talk about it, and then Rush Limbaugh get on the radio and say, why do liberals hate Super Kid? Like that was my dream. But obviously he's passed away, and that was probably the celebrity death that probably hit the hardest. If not Carmen, maybe Carmen, and Carmen died. They died very close together. Carmen, the Christian singer. But I have more than just children's books too. I have stuff for like young adult, new adult kind of stuff as well. So that's just a little bit about me and what I've been doing, and my I don't call it a side hustle, because it is really, my passion. I have a wall at home that just has a list of like dates and times of things I'm supposed to have completed. And if I don't move it, I just move the dates over. But I have so many ideas, so many long-term ideas, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me talk about it, and everyone who is considering supporting, and people who have actually supported and purchased. But yeah, I had a good time at Comic-Con, a very good time. I had pictures that I took with people, but since this is a political thing, I don't necessarily want to show those pictures on here. But I did post them on my Facebook, and I was gonna post them on my Instagram as well. So if you want to follow my just Christina L Bar Instagram, I'll post those on there. Um, but I don't want to have to show everyone's faces and stuff when they didn't. They've signed up to, hey, I'll take your photo. You can take a picture when I'm like promoting me as Ninja Dust, but I'm sure a lot of them are like conservative, so I won't blast them on here because I think some of them maybe wouldn't appreciate it. But I had a really good time, and it was encouraging to just do my thing that weekend. So and I don't know if there's any time to do anything more like that this year, but I've got some stuff planned up next year as well. So thank you guys very much for being part of the show today, for watching the show today. Please go to blacktnews.com. Like I said, that interview that I had with Anthony Ferlini, the Macomb clerk, and the cybersecurity experts, I did write about that. I did write about that story, and there is a clip of that interview within the story. So you can go to blacktnews.com, check that out, share it around, read it yourself, feel a little bit better about the future of our elections, I suppose. But you still need to be diligent yourself about people who are bad actors around. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out the different merchandise that we have on the website. We have these really neat pumpkin spice season shirts. And I did draw that chibi little Trump. Yeah, I can draw. It just takes a second. It just takes a minute. But you can check out the pumpkin spice shirts. The My Money, My Business shirt. I got that because of people in abortion, and I was sick of them saying their 2 cents. And it's like, if you want my money, you're going to hear me talk about it. So fellas, make sure that you get that, and you go to a women's protest march thing and just watch their heads explode. And I got all other kinds of content, other shirts and mugs and so on the website. So please check them out and support Black Teen News. And if you just want to throw some money and help Black Teen News, you can just go to blackteennews.com/donate and support the show. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you tomorrow for more Black Tea.